Hello, everybody. We are back and we're live. And I'm here with Corey Haines, and he is the founder of Hey Marketers. He's also a no-coder. He's a marketer himself. As you guys know, I'm Christian Pavarelli, the founder of We Are No Code. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of the projects that Corey has worked on and just sort of talk about those and enlighten you guys a little bit on no code and marketing in general. Corey, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to dig in.
Absolutely. So why don't we start off by you telling us just a little bit about what you do in general, and then we'll get into Hey Marketer, which is the first no-code project I want to talk about, and then we'll go on to talk about Swipefile, which is the other one.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, I'm a marketer by trade. It's my background, and I basically stumbled into marketing after the college that I transferred to didn't have the major that I wanted, which is actually accounting. But I think that was actually a blessing because I was like, they were like, okay, you can do global business or you can do marketing. I was like, really, that's it? And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do marketing. And turns out that I loved it. So majored in marketing, got my first job out of college doing marketing for a startup here in San Diego. Done a bunch of consulting, and now I'm with my latest job. I'm the head of growth at Metrics, which is basically kind of a fancy way to say marketing and sales. So I'll actually do a lot of kind of inbound sales, not a lot of outbound. But so I mean, I love all things marketing, love all things technology, software, SaaS, e-commerce, and now kind of on this next journey, creating stuff and putting things out in the world.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I mean, I think that like marketers, I always say this, but they were kind of the beginning of the no-code movement in the sense that they had a real need to build things to be able to run their traffic towards, right? So whether that's a website or an app or something else. And so I think that by nature, they kind of got into no-code a little earlier than other people. Definitely with the automation side of things, they were kind of at the forefront, because it was just more effective. It was making things quicker and easier for them to. So bring us through, because as a marketer, tell us about the moment when you kind of started learning a bit of no code and what it kind of, how it felt like. I mean, what was that transition? What was the discovery?
Yeah. So I mean, I've since 18, my dream has been to start and own a business. I didn't know what type of business at the time. Now I think I've kind of honed in on, I love like the kind of online business world, and hopefully we'll get into software one day. But, so over the years I've kind of like struggled and tried to figure out things. When I was in college, I used to build Squarespace sites for people. And that was probably like my foray into no code, just because like I didn't have to do any coding, and Squarespace was really kind of easy, simple platform. But then I started breaking out of Squarespace. It was like I couldn't customize it as much. I would have to start grabbing, some CSS, and then it started to get kind of weird and feel a little bit funky.
Like you're being pushed towards learning how to code, basically.
Right. And so I considered doing a couple of like coding boot camps, going through some of the free online tutorials. I went through free code camp. I know like some basic HTML and CSS, but not like only enough to like get through the tutorials. You know what I mean? Like it's not anything like creative or anything that I could just like sit down and, start hacking away. Definitely not anything on the back end as well, which is really more where kind of I think is where the real value in no code is, and where I started to kind of feel that was, it's cool to make like a website or like a landing page, or to, hook a couple of apps together and send data back and forth. But to actually make something interactive is really tough, right? And that's what's really interesting. And so when I started, I think I discovered Webflow maybe even through Vlad on Twitter when I first started getting on Twitter. And then I kind of blew it off at first, like, oh, it just seems like a gimmick, or like they just had a bunch of, I think they had a lot like fancier marketing at the time. And even as a marketer, it turned me off a little bit. But then eventually I started seeing people make sites on Webflow. And then I saw the animations. I saw basically that it was Squarespace, but on steroids. And I was like, I think I'm going to give this thing a try. And I remember the first night that I tried it, I think I spent like 6 hours. I was up until like 3 a.m. And I was just like, I can't believe that I've been doing things, a different way, and
that's so funny. I had exactly the same thing with Webflow too, or it was just like, oh my God, we can do that. And I actually did it the exact same transition. Squarespace to Webflow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that really gave me a lot. I feel like a lot of empowerment and feeling, what is possible, at least on the front end of things and what you can create. And basically then it was like, okay, how do I figure out how to kind of hack together the back end? So I have this site, but I don't want it to just be a website. I want it to be an app. I want it to be an application. And so that's when I started playing around with things like Zapier and Google Sheets. And I think right around that time too was when Ben Tossell launched Nuco, which was his first kind of iteration of MakerPad.
Yeah.
And I was one of the first people on the wait list and one of the first people to get one of the, go through his course and go through the lessons and learn some of those basic things. And then from there, I felt like I knew what was possible. It was just kind of, I had to wait for an idea, or I needed some inspiration for what to actually go build after that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So one of the first things that you built was actually Hey Marketer. So tell us what Hey Marketer, or was it Hey Marketers with an S?
Plural, yeah.
Plural.com, correct?
Yep, correct.
Awesome. So tell us what it is and bring us through a bit that process.
Yeah, so Hey Marketers came about because I was talking with a SaaS founder, and he emailed me out of the blue, and he was like, "Hey, I want to hire someone like you. Can I pick your brain about what it looks like, what your job entails, what you think? Can I run the job description by you?" And I was like, "Sure, absolutely." So we hopped on a call, and basically at the end, he was like, "Okay, so I'm trying to figure out like." Where do I find people like you? Like, where do you hang out? What Slack communities? What job boards do you look at? What newsletters? What sites? Whatever. And we were kind of looking through, and I was like, well, he wanted to hire remotely. I was like, you can post it to we work remotely, remote okay. I don't even think like the other ones like remote.co or remote were around back then. But I was like, there isn't really like a single. I was like, you can go to Growth Hackers, you could go to LinkedIn, but like there isn't a single place for marketers, right? And I knew personally, because of the connections I had made through Baremetrics and previously, that there was a really strong marketing community in tech and SaaS and e-commerce. It's just felt like there was nothing there that really served them. So he was like, "Man, if I had the time, I think I might build this thing." And I was like, I'm going to build this thing. I was like, you know what? Give me like 3 weeks and I'll be back. And I'm going to have a site up and running. You can be the first customer. And he was like, "Okay, cool. Like I would love to post for it." And, I wasn't going to charge him very much. So then it was that moment where I was like, okay, I'm just going to figure this out. And so went back to a lot of the Nuco tutorials. I think right around then was actually when Ben started rebranding to MakerPad, and he relaunched. And then there was a couple of tutorials in specific where I think he had 2 job board tutorials, and both of them were using Webflow. One was like a basic one was an advanced one. And I literally just copy and pasted everything from the tutorial and then customized it, and then added a couple more things in there. And he recommended using, I think, Airtable. I used Google Sheets just to keep it simple. I used Zapier. There's a couple of ones that I didn't do. I used Typeform, and basically I just kind of like figured out how to make it work. And actually one of the things that was interesting was because it was brand new, and there's very like marketplace kind of problem of chicken and egg with a job board, where you have to get traffic to get people to apply. Yeah. You also need jobs, so you need people to get to pay to post, right? And so I just ended up spending like a bunch of hours just seeding jobs, posting them like literally one by one. I didn't know any of the fancy automations that would just kind of like port it in like something like Integromat or Parabola would do now. So I spent like days and days and days just manually pasting in, I think 100 jobs that I had found over the past month, which also validated to me like, okay, there's really something here. And over 3 weekends, had something built with Webflow, Zapier, Google Sheets, and Typeform, and then came back to him and said, "Hey, this thing's ready. You want to post a job?" And he did.
That's amazing. So it took you 3 weeks from not knowing anything to building your first product with no code, right? And
pretty much.
How much did it cost roughly?
Yeah, I think it costs about $85 a month to maintain.
$85 a month. So that's $85 over 3 weeks, basically. So 3 weeks and $85 later, you had a company.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's amazing.
And so I kind of soft launched on Twitter and actually picked up some good steam. And then I figured like, okay, I guess I better like launch this thing for real. So the next week launched it to Product Hunt. And I think I ended up being number 5 for the day, I want to say. So that was a nice little achievement. And then And then I kind of enlisted help from my nephew who was looking for some extra work, and basically got him to kind of do some manual outreach for me, some maintenance of the site, fix up the job kind of postings, because it's still a little bit rough and kind of hacky, to be honest. And then since then, I mean, it's had some up months. I think the top month I did $1,100, but then some months was like $5, and that's also mainly because it's a pay what you want model, which I managed to pull off through Typeform, but I haven't changed it since. And but yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, and basically, like you said, 3 weekends. It wasn't even like weeks.
Yeah.
It was really weekends where I probably put in about 30 hours in total and got it up and running.
That's amazing. And your nephew, how old is he?
He's in 19.
He's 19, and he was able to just kind of like pick up the tools and keep tweaking stuff from the website, like also learned it super quick.
Yeah, basically, I mean, I just gave him like really basic access to Webflow, and then had him do all of like, gave him access to my social media and my email, and then had him do most like the outreach to try to source more jobs.
I love that. Yeah, that's exactly the type of methodology that we try to encourage. It's really like build something quickly, launch it out there, prove the model, and then focus on like getting first customers, like very quickly.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, no, I think that the approach you took, and $85 in 3 weeks, when you compare that to the number of people who put in $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, and don't have much to show for it, it's definitely quite impressive. So tell us a little bit about Swipe Files now, which is your second and most recent sort of no-code endeavor. Tell us a little bit about what it is, and then we'll talk a little bit more in detail.
Yeah, so Swipe Files, again, I sort of just stumbled into it a little bit. At this point, I'm kind of a Twitter addict, right? So I'm scrolling through, and I see this GIF and this link to a video of this guy who recreated the PS4 interface on Webflow. And my mind was just blown. I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, because
Sarkis, right? I just was on a call right before hopping on this call. I was on a call with him. He's amazing.
Yeah, Sako is kind of his nickname. But he had just, started sharing kind of what he was up to. He had built a lot of prototypes for companies, but things that he couldn't even show. And so we started building things that are public and free. And when we built PS4, I think that was like his kind of like shining moment, because I mean, there's so much animation, but also like, I think the novelty of recreating like kind of a game console interface is really interesting, right? It's really new. It's not like copying another website, right? It's a whole interface of something.
It's something
so
totally
anyways,
different.
Yeah. So I started following him. And then I think it wasn't even like maybe a week or two later, and he tweeted out, and he was like, hey, I want to build a site for someone for free, retweet and comment what your idea is, and then I'll pick one lucky winner next week. So next week rolls around, and I get a bunch of notifications, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And so I look in, and he's like, congrats, I'm not picking one of you, I'm picking 6 of you. I was like, and I was one of the people. And so I was like, oh, amazing, this is so cool. And the idea that I had posted was a curated library of marketing examples and copywriting examples, basically kind of my own productized swipe file is the way that I described it. I think I have the link to this week. I can go find it for you afterwards. But so then he kind of evolved it, and we got together, added in a couple more people, and it turned into the No Code Rumble, which the idea was like a kind of a short accelerator where you only using no code tools, we would launch like a new product within a couple of months. We've had some delays because of coronavirus, because of the protests right now, which are, all very worthy causes. Don't get me wrong at all. So we haven't officially like finished the accelerator, but I was the first one to finish mine. And basically I worked with Sako over the course of about 2 months, doing like weekly calls, and Sako really built most of it. I could have, we started from a template from Webflow, which is also another like easy hack. If you're not a designer, don't try to be a designer, just, use something or get some inspiration.
Yeah.
But it's a membership site where you can see marketing examples and really detailed teardowns of what makes those examples great.
That's amazing. Yeah. And we're going to have, by the way, for the people watching, we're going to have Sarko on later on this month or at the beginning of next month to talk about some very cool stuff as well, because I'm sure you're aware of what he's doing with Meraki Ventures. Yeah, that's super exciting. So, But yeah, no, that's so awesome. So when is this going to be live? Probably in a couple weeks.
It's been live
Almost?
actually for
Okay,
about 2 months now. Yeah.
perfect. Very cool.
So like the last week of April, I think was when I was like live and ready to launch, and I had about 15 kind of examples and teardowns that were ready to be featured. And then since then, I'm growing the library. I'm actually going to be pushing a big update today. I try to basically how the model works is there's I basically feature one teardown for free every week, and so every week there's a new teardown. I publish it. Everyone can see it for free. But then when the next one comes out, that one is locked away and kind of put in the membership site for members only. So if you become a member, you pay $29 a month, $99 a year, or $299 for life, and then you get access to the full library. And right now I'm focusing on teardowns, but I want to have a bunch of other types of content and formats and whatnot later on.
So what type of people is this interesting for? It's for marketers. Bring me through like the profile that you're targeting a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like the main kind of person I have in mind is someone like me, so an in-house marketer, because the reason why I wanted it and why I wanted something like it is because there's a bunch of other kind of swipe file sites out there. You know, there's swipefiles.com, there's swiped.co. There's even, you know, you can put one together using Pinterest, or you can just put together your own swipe file. But what I was missing was, you know, it just seemed like everything was being curated. Like, why is this thing good? Explain to me why you swiped it, right? What can I learn from this thing? And so that's why I pitched it to Sacco. And so the reason I think it's why it came to me is because as an in-house marketer, I'm constantly churning through new ideas, new projects, trying to tweak things. Like it's my dedicated job to do marketing, right? And so and marketing is so expansive as well. You know, you think of other kind of jobs and in departments like sales or product development or customer success. They're very kind of siloed and focused. Sorry, I have landscapers outside. I don't know if you can hear that. I can close my windows, but
oh no, that's all good. I can hardly hear them.
Okay, good. But basically, there's a need for you want to look at the best practices, right? I was always having to start from scratch, go and source a bunch of examples, see what was working out there, really analyze, okay, what makes this thing good and what can I take away from this? And so I think in-house marketers is kind of the main persona. I think like there's kind of a founder entrepreneur persona out there as well. You know, if you're a solo founder of a SaaS company, or if you create online courses, if you run an e-commerce store online. I'm kind of focused a little bit more on SaaS right now. I think I want to branch more out into other industries as well. But kind of the main two personas I have in mind are in-house marketers and, you know, entrepreneur founders.
Love it. No, that's super cool. I'm definitely going to go and check it out after this. Another question for you would be, so, you know, you've been now through like building a couple of these things, and in general, just as an entrepreneur, like you've built a couple companies now. If you look back and you have like some words of wisdom for, you know, people who are trying to get started, like what are some of the learnings that you sort of went through that you'd love for people not to make? Maybe the same mistakes, or maybe just some cool advice.
Yeah, I think companies is a little bit generous. I've built a couple of products, not a company yet, but some of the things, just like building products in general and being a maker. One of the things I see a lot, and that I've, you know, talked to a lot of other people about, is there's kind of like this, especially in the no code community. There's and even like a lot of developer communities, there's kind of this maker identity that people take on, where you just like to make stuff and hack things together and put it together. But I don't think, I mean, you have to balance like the idea and the execution. And I think what can end up happening is you have an idea and you think it's great, and so you just build it and then you make it, but then you don't market it. You don't understand really who it's for. You don't kind of curate it and tailor it for that person. And so then you just leave it and it ends up, you know, dying, and you shut it down a year later once you find, you know, your next bill, or once the Namecheap notification comes up for your domain expiration, right? And then so you just sort of churn through things, and you never really find any traction with everything. On the flip side, I mean, I think there's a really good value in the idea, right? So I don't think that ideas are worthless. I think that there are good ideas, there are bad ideas. But on the execution side of things, I think there's a lot of value in doing it the right way and launching the right way. one of the big things, as a marketer that I see is when people just don't market their products, or when they don't market it correctly, right? They'll just, why aren't things working? I spammed a bunch of subreddits and now people are angry at me. Marketing sucks. I quit, And it's like, okay, if you actually took the time to understand these communities, look at the rules, figure out, what gains traction in these communities, and then create a post that kind of mimics or at least uses the best practices of, the people who have found success in the past, then you can be successful with marketing. And as an aside to that, I mean, one of the other big mistakes I see is people not thinking about marketing before they even build the product. When I was thinking about Hey Marketers and Swipe Files, I was already thinking of like the business model before the even product, just to see if it was something viable or something that I could kind of sustain. I mean, my goal with each one of them was, okay, at least if this pays the bills for like keeping it self-sustaining, the Hey Marketers is $85 a month. Swipe Files, it has some shared costs, but it's also, about $100 a month. So as long as I can pay for those and not go negative, my wife won't get mad at me and I can kind of keep them going. But you have to think about the business model and the marketing beforehand. So that's why I think with Hey Marketers, one of the things that was kind of the key to success there was that the idea was born from someone else, but also that person could be my first customer. And I knew that I could ask them or I could find some other people like them. Swipe File is a very similar thing. As soon as I pulled up a landing page, I got a bunch of people to sign up, talked to a bunch of people. Hey, is this interesting? Do you have a Swipe File? I ran a couple of Twitter polls and just understood that, is there an opportunity here? And frankly, could I leverage my personal brand to kind of brute force my way with the marketing already? So if you don't have an audience, it's going to be really hard. And it's going to be a struggle to kind of scrape and claw your way to the next user, the next customer, the next, person to your website. I'm rambling a little bit, but if I had to sum up,
I love that, man. You nailed some really important points, and I think that like, I ran an accelerator for a while, like a tech accelerator, and it's just like, it's exactly what you said. Either people are like really geeking out on product and not thinking about actually everything else they have to build to make this a business, or they're geeking out, they're like really good at sales and stuff, but then they like are so lost on the product side and they end up just spending. So I think that like, and that's one thing definitely, like, I'm an ambassador of that for sure, because that's what we do at the No Code Startup, is really teach both those methodologies alongside. It's like, man, Silicon Valley has been going for 50 years. Like, you don't have to learn from scratch. You don't have to go and, there is methodology out there. There's better than others. And so trying to figure it out from scratch alone, it just doesn't really make sense sometimes. I think that like, but let's dig a little bit deeper on the marketing side. So like, let's talk about, you just built your first product. You're a first-time founder. You don't necessarily have experience with marketing. What would you advise people to do in terms of first steps with regard to marketing?
Yeah, what I did with Swipe File or with Hey Marketers, even before I started, was I just looked through, okay, what do I think could be kind of the channels that I can rely on to market this thing, especially being like a marketplace, kind of a two-sided business model with people posting jobs and then people, job seekers coming to the site. I knew that it was really critical if it was going to be successful in any way. I mean, marketing was going to be a big part of that, right? And so I just went down the list of like all the channels, SEO, content marketing, social media, paid ads, doing direct kind of sales or outreach, affiliates, referrals, like just kind of go down the line of what are all the options, do a little bit of brainstorming about, okay, how could I kind of use this for Hey Marketers or my product? And what I found and what I felt comfortable with Hey Marketers before even launch was, hey, there's a bunch of keywords out there people are searching for in Google that are low competition and have a pretty good amount of search volume, and that I think that I could, within a few months, have some decent rankings for them to at least get some sort of recurring traffic. Any sort of recurring traffic, I mean, is absolutely invaluable, right? Because that means that you're not doing additional work for each additional user. They just come because you've already laid the groundwork. One of the other things I knew would work pretty well is actually direct outreach, and that's why I kind of handed that off to my nephew, because it's the most time intensive part. That's another thing, though. I mean, if you're looking at like, hey, the only viable channels are content marketing and sales, and I don't like either of those ones, maybe you shouldn't build the product. Maybe this isn't like the thing for you. Maybe you should go and explore something else where the channels are maybe much more in line with what you want to do, like SEO or with partnerships or with, things that kind of play more to your skill set, or at least what you enjoy doing. I think honestly, it comes down to really just understanding like the customer, the user. Where do they hang out? What do they think about? What do they care about? What are the kind of values and things that are going to make their jobs easier and are going to alleviate those pains, right? Fix those problems. There's a bunch of different euphemisms for the same thing, which is just how can you understand your customer and be able to provide value and communicate it in a way where they understand it, they get it, right? It clicks, and then they will be convinced enough to sign up for your product or join your newsletter, whatever it is, kind of the entry point to your business.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Correct. I mean, like getting that messaging right, I think is just so crucial before trying to really push that message to everyone, right? And that's what you're saying. It's like, and when we're talking about a business, we're talking about value propositions, benefits, features, etc. So that's where you would start almost, right? It's like in the messaging.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And,
I would start with
and no paid ads.
No, I mean, not really. It's sort of a, it's a very kind of outdated, like, I'll put up a landing page, run paid ads, and then see like, charge people for like a product that doesn't exist in the refund. It's like, I don't know. I think that there's probably an easier way to do that. I'm not saying it's wrong or that's bad. Probably could work for some people, but I think very early on, even just doing some kind of customer discovery of hopping on a phone call like this, or emailing a couple of people, running a survey, like just posting on social media these days and maybe tagging a couple people or just asking them to respond, DMing them, right? You can get the insights that you need in order to kind of feel confident and understand how they think about things, what's important to them. The book that I'm like peddling the most right now is Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. And it's all about positioning. And I mean, that's where I kind of start with everything now, is because it's the cornerstone of the value of the business and the product. If you can't kind of carve out for yourself a nice little position in the market where only you do this, and I love that kind of rule. I think actually, I don't know if April really kind of pushes it. It might be someone else, but it's kind of like the only rule. If you're not the only at something, then you're doing it wrong. Like you're going to have a hard time, basically.
Yeah.
Where can I be the only thing? With Hey Marketers, this is the only job board specifically for marketers. With Spy Files, this is the only membership site for marketers with detailed teardowns. Like that in itself then tells you what the value is, and then you can go out and market and say, is this interesting? Is this position compelling enough for you to give me money?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So interesting. Where do you see all this going? Like, because now we're talking about we're getting to this place where it's like the convergence between like marketing and sort of building actual products with no code. This, and the way I see it is that it's going to completely revolutionize early stage entrepreneurship and probably entrepreneurship in general. But it's also going to influence the investment communities around that. And I'm in touch with a lot of the VCs and accelerators in LA, but also around the globe. And it's pretty clear that there's a lot of things that people aren't really seeing coming. So where do you see this movement going? Like, what is this gonna do moving forward?
It's interesting. I mean, I wish I was sort of kind of tech prophet.
Or maybe just like focus on marketing.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I have some opinions about no code. I think, if you look back in history, at least with like software in general, you had kind of like the early kind of, ancient times of software where, everything is on premise and just desktops and it's, very basic applications. And then we sort of had this software boom in the late 90s. I was there, but I was not like in, the movement there. I was too young. But from the books I've read and things I've heard, it was very kind of, it's all about e-commerce and it was all about just creating websites, right? And then we had kind of this SaaS movement, which Salesforce very much pioneered, where now instead of on-premise and custom software and things that are very like kind of bespoke, it's a very standardized, subscription-based, accessible. From that, kind of the infrastructure layer has been things like AWS and a lot of developer tools. And so now I kind of see like, if you look back and you're like, okay, things were really simple and then they got really kind of sophisticated and powerful. And now they're really complex. Now I think we're going to start getting back to that simplification which is I think where no code comes in, where a lot of these tools, like they're not going to go away. They're just going to get easier to use and more accessible to more people. So AWS, instead of having to, like go into the terminal and basically like hack everything together with your database, like there's going to be tools that will bridge those gaps, right? And that will naturally plug in and basically do less monkey work. I mean, I think that's where a lot of like the value of software is, and kind of like tools in general is just doing less monkey work, less repetitive work, less things that can be automated to a robot, quote unquote, some things, some sort of application that can do that for you. So I think, companies like Webflow, especially, I'm really long on Webflow because when they raised their Series A, they are very much like, we are going to build the software applications of the next century. And I think that they have like the front end pretty well kind of taken care of. Now it's just going to be the back end.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a really, really hard problem to solve for and really tricky. It's going to take some time. We'll do it. We'll definitely get there. But that's where I see it is now kind of the simplification and accessibility of back-end applications is where I think that there's going to be a lot of innovation in the next few years.
Absolutely. And that's only going to be accelerated, I think, with like the kind of experiences we can also deliver is going to be accelerated by 5G. There's a lot of stuff coming. I also believe that like some of these, a lot of these no-code tools are kind of going to get bought out by companies like Amazon, who provide sort of the cloud infrastructure behind them in a way to basically have access to people and not have to sell AWS cloud storage services like they're currently doing with coders. Like people just won't even know that AWS is running the backend. I mean, a lot of times people don't know that that's happening currently, but developers definitely know that. I mean, makers may never know what's hosting their backend, right? They're just building cool stuff. And I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think that's where we reach this exciting point where you can get like, when we're moving into like a huge population of the world being able to build like software solutions. So that's definitely something that I'm an ambassador for. I don't usually take too many sides in terms of like the specific tools. I think they're going to continue evolving. I definitely can praise companies like Webflow, like Zapier, like Bubble, like, but I think that there's going to be a constant evolution there too. And I think that also like right now we're seeing complex things happening. The phone the other day with a guy who's building an API to be able to put AR elements into your app, and I think that AI, blockchain, like all these things now are going to enter the node space via sort of APIs, where you'll be able to build way more complex things. So like right now we've probably gone from what you said, right? It's like landing pages to like actual full-on web apps and like mobile apps and all that. And I think the next step is going to be like going into these even more cutting edge technologies and solutions around that. So it's the natural next step of evolution.
Yeah.
Coding,
I mean,
right?
even in the last 2 years, I think that we've seen a huge amount of innovation with, tools on top of other tools, right? Kind of like this platformization. My friend, Chris Spags, he built a little tool for Hey Marketers that just allowed people to search right on the page and be able to filter, easily without kind of using a bunch of wonky buttons.
JetBoost, right?
Yeah. And so I did a bunch of marketing for Hey Marketers and basically talked about how I built this no-code job board in 3 weeks. And then a bunch of people, kind of caught some traction. A bunch of people read it. And then it was like almost every day, sometimes there'd be someone reaching out to me on Twitter or on LinkedIn saying, hey, like I loved your article. I cloned your site. I wanted to, recreate a job board for myself, but I can't figure out this whole search thing and this filter thing. Like, how did you do that? And I'd be like, oh, sorry. Like, that's like the one piece of code my friend Chris built it. Like, DM him, maybe he can build it for you. And he had so many people, and then it kind of caught on like, hey, you can, there's a solution out there that can do this. And then he basically productized it. He built JetBoost, and now it's doing really well. It's his own business. He's going full time on it now.
He's also in San Diego, right?
Yeah. We actually
I'm gonna have to ask you for his contact because I want to get him. I want to get a chat in with him as well. He's
definitely
an awesome guy.
Yeah, actually, I met him because I started a Indie Hackers of San Diego meetup about 1.5 years ago, and he was one of the ones that showed up, and now we're good friends. But same thing with MemberStack. it was like this little niche tool out there. I remember seeing it a couple times of like, hey, you can make your Webflow site a membership site. Now it's like a full on like solution for managing kind of the back end on
Membership
Webflow.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I use for swipe files. I mean, literally, swipe files is built on Webflow, JetBoost, and MemberStack, and with just those three, like the whole thing is basically complete.
No, it's just so exciting. So tell us, like, give us a little stack for the marketing side. Like, what are some of the tools that you're excited about?
For like no code marketing, or
yeah,
what in
I mean,
specific?
Anything that any of the tools that you've been using that you find very effective. Just probably naming a couple tools basically.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously really love Webflow, JetBoost. I love MemberStack, Zapier. I use ConvertKit for most kind of.
Sorry, I mean marketing, on the marketing end, like the marketing automation.
I'm not like a big marketing automation nerd. I actually think there's a lot of kind of smoke, to be honest. Marketers make some big promises, and especially a lot of salespeople. I'll tell you, the marketing tools that I use the most are Ahrefs, Calendly, and
to do the research.
Yeah, and maybe like we actually just moved off of Intercom. I think Intercom's also a really great platform. But like a lot of marketing automation tools, email tools, like it's a little bit overblown. There's a lot of like I will say maybe the one actually again that kind of like powers a lot of the back end is Clearbit. I think Clearbit is a really fantastic tool. But there's a lot on there. I'll tell you just some of the ones, because I'm not like a huge fan of them, but some of the ones I also use for swipe files. I use Beamer for like in-app notifications for kind of like users of swipe files. I like using Sparkloop, which is basically a plugin for newsletters, and it powers my referral program for the newsletter. Yeah, Sparkloop.app, created by Emmanuel. He's a great founder, and Louis Nichols. And then what's the other one? Dang it. Sparkly. Oh, and Write Message, which is my favorite, like kind of email capture tool. Basically, they're like a surveying tool that kind of is morphed into more like lead capture and email capture to build your email lists. But they have also like a bunch of personalization features, and it makes it really easy basically to not bug your people to come to your site. Like if they're already a subscriber, don't show them a pop-up that says join my email list, right? That's annoying as heck. And they allow you to filter and segment that way so that you're sending a personalized message for the person based on kind of where they are in the life cycle, if you will.
I love it, Corey. This was really insightful. Thank you so much for joining. So tell us where people can find you. I know you're a big Twitter fan. Where do you usually respond?
Yeah, if you need another person screaming in your ear all day long, no, it's Twitter. I'm at Corey Haines Co. Also, my personal website is coreyhaines.co. You can find links to all my sites on there. There's Refactoring Growth, Mental Models for Marketing, some of my other projects. Obviously, Hey Marketers, Swipe Files. And yeah, that's probably the best two places, my Twitter and personal site.
Very cool. Well, yeah, thanks again for joining us. I mean, this was so cool. And I think that you're really at the forefront of building and being a maker in San Diego. I'll come and visit you soon, not too far, 2 hours away.
Let's do it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
I'm very excited for what you guys are working on. So thanks so much for joining us during this interview, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
There you go. Take care. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.